My name is Pi-Chuan. I am a software engineer at Google, and I've been with Magic. I've been, I guess, mentoring for Magic since 2008, so 12 years now. I was listening to the presentation earlier, and it's really impressive. Can you maybe both start with a quick introduction again, and we'll go into questions.
I can start off. So I'm Peridot. I just graduated high school from Menlo School in Atherton, California. And I am now, actually, as of 2 days ago, a freshman at UC Berkeley. Intended cognitive science and maybe biology, not sure.
Cool. Nice. I am Smriti. I was a former Magic mentee when I was in 7th grade. And I graduated. I studied computer science at MIT, graduated last year, and started my first job at Google, also as a software engineer at Google in New York.
Cool. So I was listening to the presentation, and I find it really impressive because I think the topic of going into both machine learning and in like a health topics seems really impressive. And I guess I didn't mention in the introduction, I'm actually on the Google Health and the genomics team. Not having a health background, actually. So I find it really impressive that you're able to do that. Question for Peridot, like when you chose this topic, and you mentioned that you're already interested, right? Like, but what is the process of narrowing down to the specific disease that you end up choosing?
Yeah, so I definitely went in with a very broad focus, not even knowing what was out there. And I think one of the big things that helped narrow it down was just the data sets that were available. I was super interested in neuroscience and psychiatric diagnosis, but just by virtue of the fact that there was such a convenient data set already available, that made the decision a lot easier for me. But it did take us, I think, at least 3 weeks to sort of settle on that topic. So
cool. And actually that relates to my next question, which is, so you spent 3 weeks kind of research this topic, right? But it seems like, you also look into like machine learning. Like, how do you balance that, like 2 different topics and then kind of finding a solution, but also doing research? How would you say like the time allocation? And maybe Peridot, you start again, and maybe, okay, I saw that Smriti just unmute. Maybe Smriti, you can start first then.
Oh, I think I was just off mute, I realized. But I think this, from my perspective, I don't think I had to do a lot here. I think Peridot took a lot of initiative outside of our meetings, and in the beginning kind of did these in parallel. It was like our first task was, okay, kind of look into what is AI ML, but also what NDD or what area do you want to explore and what data sets are there? Yeah, Peridot, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think obviously I was so grateful to have Smriti be able to help me out with the machine learning part of it. Definitely without her, it would have been a much more difficult process. And I was also grateful that I've had the opportunity to learn more about neuroscience and computer science in school as well. So I think having that background really helped solidify that and simplify the whole process.
And actually, so Peridot, before this project, did you already have experience with programming already?
Yeah, I had taken AP computer science at my school, and then I also had done, like, our school has a sequence where you can take a class afterwards as well. And that was in Python, so I already had that kind of experience. So yeah, that was my computer science experience.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because I was looking at the project, it's like, if you have to learn everything from beginning, that definitely seems pretty difficult.
Yeah, actually, and if I can just say something, so yeah. I think like it was really good that I had the CS experience, but having had like no ML experience, the tutorial that we followed was definitely a godsend. Without that, it probably would have added another month to our project. So definitely utilizing that existing resource was super key.
Yeah, and I was going to add too that in our last meeting, I was reminding Peridot that in our first meeting, she had never heard of convolutional neural network. So definitely like engaging and learning a lot about AI ML is a huge learning curve and ramp up. it was great to have the, some coding foundation before.
I don't quite remember if you mentioned, is there a particular resource that you would point to? Like, for example, coding people would kind of refer to like Code Academy. Is there like one site or one resource that you would particularly recommend there for AI and machine learning?
Not sure about like machine learning specifically, but for data science as a whole, I would totally say Kaggle. I had used Kaggle for like a few of my classes before, mostly for sourcing data sets. I had no idea that like they did competitions and stuff like that and like had tutorials, but for sure, if I hadn't had Kaggle, I don't know where I would be right now.
And so experience with Kaggle, was it starting from this mentorship, or like did you actually know about it before?
For me, I had briefly used it before in classes, but definitely not to the extent that we did for this project. Yeah, like I said, I think it was mostly in terms of like getting the actual data sets. Like I had a few assignments like that prior to this, but yeah, I didn't know they had tutorials and like notebooks and a whole system.
Yeah, I don't think I know that either, actually. Smriti, how about you? Like, do you have experience with?
Yeah, I was going to add that my experience with AI/ML has been very academic. I've done a couple things like at internships, but I actually reached out to the Magic Mentor alias, and I think you had replied with a couple things too, Pi-Chuan, and we kind of compiled that list. Kaggle was one of the things there, and we looked at some other things, but definitely I think, and then I also, as a general AI/ML thing, I put together a presentation, just kind of like a brief summary glimpse of what it is and what the applications are and what we can maybe do with it.
Cool. One more question. What do you, kind of like on a meta level, what would you say is particularly successful, maybe like a pleasantly surprise in this mentorship? I guess we'll go in the order of Peridot first and then Smriti.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like I could talk about like the content of what we learned, but I could also talk about, like the experience of being in Magic and how amazing Smriti was. I think as for the content, I did sort of touch on this in the presentation, but I did not know that I was going to, have to write a shell script or have to do so much Python for this. I didn't even know what TensorFlow or Keras was. I also did not know that I was going to be learning about fMRI. So that was a really pleasant surprise, and definitely something that I will take with me, because there actually is a club at Berkeley that does very similar projects to what we worked on. So I'll probably apply to that at some point. But then as for like more about the mentoring experience and the relationship, I've never done anything like this before. Like I've never had a mentor for 3 months or at all. So it was really nice for me to get this experience of sort of, having free reign to explore what I'm interested in, but also have the guidance whenever I needed it. Smriti always supported me whenever I needed it, but she also gave me all this room to grow. And so I think definitely mentoring experiences like this are super valuable. Would totally recommend that someone do Magic in the future. Yeah, I don't know, maybe Smriti has something else to say.
Yeah, I can just add to that and say that I think we approached a pretty heavy, ambiguous, open area of like what do you want to tackle and what do you want to learn. And I think the surprising thing for me was just seeing how much Peridot was able to do. Like I mentioned, in parallel, learning a lot about her interests in the more science area and the more medical area, and then also ramping up on all of this AI/ML thing. I think it would be definitely, like, I didn't necessarily expect us to actually build a CNN, and it wouldn't have been necessary, but it's cool that it happened and you were able to get something working end to end. And I think that's directly because of Peridot's like dedication to the project and the amount of work she did in and outside, and just her curiosity, inquisitiveness, and also being okay with spending like 3-4 weeks just on understanding how to process fMRI images and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually curious, Peridot, how much time outside the mentoring hour do you spend, like on average?
I'm not sure in terms of hours, but it certainly felt like a lot sometimes. I think so. Like I said, sort of the process of like structuring a project, I had very little experience in beforehand. So I think at the beginning it was like trying to figure out what do I need to learn and what do I not need to learn. And like I started out reading so many papers, which like, okay, it was really good for me to read those papers, and I definitely like am glad that I read them. Did they actually play a part in the CNN? Like, not really. So, you know, even though it was interesting and definitely would not regret having done that, I think these 12 weeks were also a really good, I guess, experience to figure out how do I structure this experience, and you know, what should I spend my time on and what do I not need to spend my time on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Smriti, would you say you on average, how much more time do you spend preparing for this?
I honestly, like, Peridot took the reins for our meetings. I think the most amount of time I spent was in the beginning, just when I was trying to help decide, like, how do we narrow down this project?
Right.
What resources do we use and all of that. I think once we got into the nitty-gritty of implementation, I was pretty hands off, and I came to the meeting. I was like, okay, so what did you do? I mean, I was there to answer questions and be a resource, but really, I think you, like Peridot, you were able to gain that skill of understanding what to prioritize and what to learn.
Yeah, cool. So I think, yeah, it sounds like content-wise is very great experience, but also like from this interview, I feel like definitely like the mentee gets to a point where, yeah, she's taking charge, you're taking charge of like your learning experience, which is, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess like during the presentation, there was also already a question about whether you can kind of extend this in school, and you already talk about that you'll be able to take classes. So that's great. And I guess one thing to point out is that also now that you're in college, I think you can also, if you want to be a mentor for magic at some point, if that's something that you're interested in. I definitely feel like, oh, I actually, Smriti is a person who, you know, you both were a mentee and mentor before. So I think it is a good experience. Obviously, you just start college, so you can take some time there, but I think it would be good to consider that at some point.
Plus 100.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to emphasize again that I am like so grateful to Magic for, I guess, allowing me to have this experience. Like I said, I had no prior mentoring or like being a mentee experience, so this was a really good look into how useful that can be. And I also actually, just like on a like sort of unrelated note, during the summer I also had an opportunity to be a mentor in a different capacity. And so that was also a super great experience. So just, yeah, summarizing it, I think for sure would love to be a mentor at some point. We'll see when that happens. Things are so crazy right now, but yeah, would recommend Magic to anyone.
Cool, that's great.
Yeah, thank you for interviewing us, Pi-Chuan.
Yeah, no problem. Nice talking to you both.